Hi, I'm USA Today bestselling author Jennifer Youngblood. Thanks for joining me for one chapter a day, The Clean Romance Way. Today, I'll be reading chapter 15 of her Crazy Rich Fake Fiancé. Okay, this is getting more complicated by the day. I really feel for Haven. Here we go. Chapter 15. Haven came down the stairs dressed in her winter gear to go ding-dong ditching. Despite the headache of the media and Lillian's treasure, Haven felt a quiver of excitement over the upcoming adventure. She was about to go into the kitchen where everyone was supposed to meet, but stopped in her tracks when she heard angry voices, Wyatt and his dad. Apprehension gripped Haven as she stole down the hall toward the room where they were. She paused in the doorway of what looked to be Charles's office. Wyatt and Charles were sitting in chairs facing the fire, their backs to her. "Why are you being so stubborn? You know how desperately I need your help with the companies." "This isn't about stubbornness, Dad. This is about me doing what I love." Wyatt's voice took on a note of intensity. "My patients need me as much as I need them." "Baloney. You're running away from responsibility." "No, I'm not." Wyatt's voice rose to near shouting. "It's time for you to step up to the plate, settle down, start a family." Wyatt chortled out a hard laugh. "I am being responsible. You've met Bryn. You see how good we are together." A wave of pleasure ran through Haven. Yes, they were good together. "Do you think I'm stupid?" Charles laughed harshly. "You and Bryn? Really?" The blood drained from Haven's face, making her feel dizzy. For a second, all she could hear was the heavy thudding of the pulse in her ears. "What do you mean?" Haven caught the outrage in Wyatt's voice. At least he was standing up for her. She felt hurt and floored. Why did Charles not like her with Wyatt? She'd felt accepted, a part of something. Was it all a sham? Maybe none of them liked her. Were they all just pretending so they could get through the holidays amicably? "Bryn's amazing. You saw that for yourself, if you have eyes to see, that is," Wyatt said. "I'll admit that I was happily surprised by Bryn. She doesn't seem anything like the person the media makes her out to be." "Exactly," Wyatt fired back. A heady relief flooded through Haven. She had to squelch the hysterical laugh bubbling in her throat. It wasn't her, but Bryn's reputation that was putting Charles off. "But how do you know that the girl we're seeing is the real deal? You and I both know that there must be some grains of truth in what the media says about her. Salacious parties, a different guy on her arm each time, a designer desperate for the limelight. Who's to say she won't go back to her old ways when you return to New York?" "Because I know her," Wyatt said fiercely. "I love her, Dad. The two of us are getting married." "What?" Charles asked, stunned. At the same instant, Haven let out an audible gasp. Her hand went over her chest. Married? She and Wyatt? Tears filled her eyes, her heart doing a giddy dance. It was all she could do to stop herself from bounding into Wyatt's arms. Charles and Wyatt turned, realizing she was there. Wyatt's eyes widened as he stood. He shoved his hands in his pockets and rocked forward on the balls of his feet. "Hey!" He came towards her, a tight smile fixed over like plastic over his face. "I take it you heard all that?" he said in a low tone. "Yes." Why was he acting so strained? He gathered her hands in his. She was surprised at how cold his hands were, especially since he'd been sitting near the fire. "Just go along with it," he whispered. Understanding registered. With that realization came a staggering disappointment. Wyatt was only saying those things to get a rise out of his dad. She swallowed, forcing a smile. "Of course, I'm happy to help," she said quietly. What had she expected, that Wyatt would fall madly in love with her over the course of a few days? Things were progressing between them. Haven would have to be patient with the pace things were going, one step at a time. Still, she was sorely disappointed. Her hopes had soared to the stars, and now she was crashing back down to earth. Wyatt placed his hand on the small of her back, leading her into the room. When they approached, Charles rose to his feet, giving Haven a pained look. "I suppose you heard the things I said about you." "Yes." The hurt returned with a vengeance. She bit her lower lip, thinking how her feelings made no sense. She wasn't the one who lived the party life. Charles had said that he was happily surprised at how Haven or Bryn was in real life. Charles gave her a searching look. "Surely you must understand my reservations." Haven was unprepared for the shame that covered her like a hot blanket as she broke eye contact and looked down at the floor. Crazy, but she felt as though Bryn's actions were hers. She forced herself to look up and meet Charles's eyes. "Yes, I do understand your reservations, but I'm not that girl you've read about." Tears pressed behind her eyes, requiring a superhuman effort to keep them at bay. "Being here with your family, seeing the love you have for one another, your desire to give back to the community and people in need." Her voice quivered as she drew in a breath. "I'm honored that you would invite me into your home and let me be part of everything." She couldn't hide the tears brimming in her eyes as she turned to Wyatt. "That your son would put so much faith and trust in me." She smiled to cover the emotion. "It means the world. Excuse me." Her hand went to her mouth as she hastily walked from the room. When she got into the hall, she couldn't stop tears from rolling down her cheeks. Wyatt stepped behind her and placed his hands on her arms, pulling her into his chest. "Are you okay?" "Yes, stupid, traitorous tears. I'm sorry." She pulled in a breath, trying to pull herself back together. He turned her around to face him. "What's wrong?" he asked tenderly. She let out a shaky laugh. "I guess all the craziness about the treasure and the things your dad said got to me." His lips formed a tight line. "He had no right to say those things about you." Wyatt was loyal, devoted, determined to stand by her side at all costs. How could she not fall in love with a man like him? "Yes," she admitted sadly. "Your dad would have a right to be worried if I were that girl." "Tell him the rest," her heart instructed. "But you're not. You're warm, kind, down to earth." He caressed the curve of her jaw. "You're incredible," he breathed, then had to catch himself. "I had no right to pretend that we're engaged." A wry grin twisted over his lips. "Maybe it was wishful thinking, huh?" Her heart picked up its beat. Wyatt did want her. Tendrils of the joy returned, wrapping comforting threads of silk around her heart as she melted into him, resting her head on his chest. "I'm sorry I'm being such a crybaby," she lamented. "I'm sorry my family is so dang suspicious of everyone and everything." She heard the frustration in his voice. "No worries. I'm sure they've had to be, to protect themselves. Your dad is a nice man. I appreciate him giving me a chance." A shiver slinked down her spine. "Despite everything he's read and heard about me, what would they all think of Haven when they learn the truth?" Haven heard movement, realizing Charles was standing in front of them. She pulled away from Wyatt, who kept his arm around her. Charles cleared his throat. "Let me be the first to congratulate the two of you on your engagement," he said stiffly. "Thank you," Haven said. Another lie. They were stacking up faster than she could count them. She glanced at Wyatt, who took it all in stride. "Thanks, Dad," he said heartily. "Have you set a date yet?" "No," Haven answered quickly. "We'll let you know the moment something is set," Wyatt said in an upbeat tone. "What's this about a date?" Beverly asked, stepping up to them. She was dressed in a cream coat and matching hat, a red scarf tied around her neck. "Charlie and Bryn are engaged," Charles announced. Beverly's jaw dropped. "What?" Tears filled her eyes. "That's wonderful," she exclaimed, hugging first Haven and then Wyatt. Okay, now Haven really felt like a louse, not to mention the fact that she was irritated with Wyatt for raising the stakes. A mere girlfriend wasn't enough for him. He had to take things to the next level, which would be fine if it were real. As it was just getting everyone's hopes up for nothing. Beverly linked her arms through Haven and Wyatt's. "Let's go and tell the rest of the family." Enthusiasm sounded in her voice. "Have you set a date?" We're working on it," Wyatt answered with a hint of laughter in his eyes. Haven could have slugged him. "We'll need to reserve the church. Oh, and we need to decide on the reception hall." She looked at Haven. "And your dress." Beverly chuckled. "Of course, you'll probably want to design your own." "Yes," Haven said dully as they entered the kitchen. A moment later, when the happy news was announced, she was forced to put on a fake smile and act like she was gloriously happy. Oh, what a tangled web we weave. The web was getting more tangled with every passing minute. Haven felt like a helpless fly trapped in the web of her own and Wyatt's making. All Haven needed now was for Bryn or Demi to show up at the door, shouting at the top of their lungs that she was a big fat fraud. Beverly put her hands together. "All right, everyone, as soon as Charles goes out front to talk to the press, we're making a beeline to the delivery truck." "What about Dad?" Ellie asked, looking at Charles. "I'll join you at the rental car place," Charles assured her. "The press will assume everyone is still inside. When I leave 10 minutes later, they'll think I'm going to the office, as usual." He wiggled his eyebrows at Beverly. "Wish me luck." She laughed and kissed him on the cheek. "You know, this is kind of fun. I feel like a rebel." "You are a rebel, dear," Charles said, his eyes moving over her with such love that it evoked an ache in Haven's heart. "Let's do this thing," Wyatt said, drawing Haven close and giving her a peck on the lips. "Gross!" Connor gawked. "Oh, give the happy couple a break," Ellie said, ruffling Connor's hair. She flashed Haven an exuberant smile. "I'm excited to have another sister." She leaned in and spoke in a low tone, shooting Aubrey a furtive glance. "One that I actually like." "Amen," Wyatt chimed. "You and Charlie are great together," Ellie said, sincerity ringing in her voice. "Yes, we are," Wyatt agreed. Having had just about enough of the ruse, Haven turned to Wyatt with a raised eyebrow. He was completely unaffected by her irritation. In fact, he winked and laughed. "Let's go, my beautiful bride-to-be. We'll show you how the Davenports ding-dong ditch." Ralph stepped into the kitchen, his face flushed with excitement. "Charles just started his speech to the press. Go to the delivery van now." "Here we go," Wyatt said as they rushed out the back door. Okay, wow. So now Wyatt and Haven are engaged. Oh, goodness, this is getting trickier and trickier. Do you agree with Wyatt's dad? Should Wyatt step away from his patients and help Charles run the family company? I suppose wealth and success has its price. Do you blame Charles for being concerned about Bryn's party girl reputation? I'm sure he's worried about Wyatt getting hurt. I mean, I think about my boys and how I felt and about when they were choosing their wives, and I just wanted to make sure that they were the right ones, and so I can totally understand Charlie's reservations. Of course, how's the family going to react when they find out the truth? Join me tomorrow for the next chapter. Here's to keeping it sweet and swoony. See y'all tomorrow.